Tom Connor and Vernon Stevens. The focus of tonight's debate is on the pro-life issue. My name is Sally Zaleski, and I am the president of Orangeburg County Citizens for Life, your host for this evening's debate. With me are members from our chapter who you may have met when you arrived this evening, and I'd just like to have our members stand briefly so you can say hello. Thank you. As most of you already know, Senator John Matthews, who served the people of South Carolina Senate District 39 for many years, made the decision to retire and not seek re-election. This opened the seat to allow candidates to run to fill the seat. Before you this evening are the two candidates who are seeking your vote. Mr. Connor lives in Utahville and is running on the Republican ticket. Mr. Stevens lives in Bowman and is running on the Democrat ticket. While there are many issues for candidates to debate, tonight the candidates will answer and debate questions on the basic life issues of abortion, euthanasia, cloning, and political free speech. Since this is a formal debate and not a town hall, no questions will be taken from you, our guests. But if there is time following the debate tonight, you may speak with the candidates individually. Orangeburg County Citizens for Life is a nonprofit chapter affiliate of South Carolina Citizens for Life, which is a state affiliate of the National Right to Life Committee, which is the nation's oldest and largest single-issue Right to Life organization. Here in Orangeburg County and throughout South Carolina, we seek to protect the most vulnerable members of our society through education and legislation, because we believe that the first civil right is the right to life. Our hope for you this evening is that we provide you with an opportunity to learn where the candidates stand on the pro-life issue, as one of these two candidates will be elected by you, the people, and debating pro-life legislation at the State House. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight's debate, Harvey Elwood Jr. Mr. Elwood is the General Manager of WOCS 93.7 FM here in Orangeburg. He will provide the rules and structure of tonight's proceedings. Thank you again, and enjoy the debate. Mr. Stevens, Mr. Connor.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The questions are going to be, questions, maybe it's me, bring me down. Testing 1, 2. Okay. Okay, you guys can hear me, right? That's good. All right. We've got questions, again, as we suggested, or has been suggested to me, and the 4 areas of consideration, or the questioning is going to be abortion, euthanasia, human cloning, and political free speech. I'm going to alternate between the 2 of you. I'll point to you. I'll ask the question, and I'll get a response from you, and then vice versa. Okay? Is that fair? All right, here we go. And again, one other thing I do want to make note of is that these questions were provided for me. These did not come from me. These came from the organization, the host organization. All right. We're going to start off with an opening statement, which is one minute and a half? Exactly 1 minute. And we'll start with you.
My name is Tom Connor. I am the Republican candidate for the Senate District Seat 39 in Columbia. I'm a lifelong resident of Orangeburg County. I was born here, raised here, educated here, and spent most of my working career in the Orangeburg County area, working for various A&E firms, architectural engineering firms. My background is in architecture. I'm pro-life. pro-Second Amendment. I'm a constitutionalist, which covers the rest of the Constitution and amendments. And like you, I'm concerned about the way the country is reacting to events going on in the news. And I just want to be another Republican conservative voice in Columbia. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vernon Stevens. I am the Democratic nominee for Senate District number 39. I'm a lifelong resident of Bowman, South Carolina. I was educated in the public schools of Bowman and St. George. I graduated from South Carolina State College then in 1980. I've been actively involved in my communities and the surrounding communities of Orangeburg County for approximately 42 years. I have been that political activism, and I will continue to do that. I spent 20 years as school board member as well as vice chair and chairman of Orangeburg Consolidated School District number 5. I have also spent many years actively involved in the Concerned Citizens of Legislative District number 66 as its chairman, as well as the Bowman branch of the NAACP for 42 years. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you both very much. All right, the first question is going to be on the subject of abortion. Orangeburg County Citizens for Life believes that unborn children should be protected by law, and that abortion should be permitted only when it is the only way to prevent the death of the mother. Under what circumstances, other than that, do you believe that abortion should be legal? And the three options that were provided to me, and also to you, unless you have some other alternative answer. In no case, only to prevent the death of the mother, or to prevent the death of the mother, and in case of incest, or in the case of forcible rape, reported to law enforcement authorities. I'll start with you again.
Well, I would have to agree with that statement. An unborn child is a human being, not a part of a woman's body that some people would think. The reason being that if you're talking about appendix or tonsils or gallbladder, they all share the same genetic code as the woman who is pregnant with the child. The child, however, has a different genetic code. It also has the DNA from the father as well as the mother, and could also share blood type with the mother or have an entirely different blood type. As with me, I have my mother's blood type, AB negative. My two brothers and sister are O positive, the same as my father. And I believe that when conception begins, that's when the whole human issue starts as well. And they should be afforded the same rights as a full-grown human in society.
Stephen, same question.
Thank you. I do believe that once a child has been conceived, that is a living human being. I respect that. My only exception is that when a mother's health is in danger or her life is in danger, as well as a child, whether that individual has been raped or incest. But I do believe that we as a society must come to grips with what exactly, from a scientific and a doctor's standpoint, those individuals who are truly in the health profession, who can say truthfully that a human being is a fetus, is a living human being at conception. If that is the scientific term, then I have no problem with it. I will continue to have my opinions about it, which is that at conception, that is when a child is a human being.
Okay, thank you. All right. We'll start back with you, Mr. Stevens. Will you support a law that will prohibit the use of abortion as a means of birth control? Will you support a law that will prohibit the use of abortion as a means of birth control?
Yes, sir, I would definitely do so. I don't believe that birth control and the should be a means by which we have birth control. There are too many. I'm sorry. Wait.
You finish, I'm sorry.
Great, I'm done. Thank you.
Same question to you. Will you support a law that will prohibit the use of abortion as a means of birth control?
Yes, I will. I would be more inclined to support preventative measures such as contraception prior to conception. And I think using abortion as a means of birth control is morally and ethically wrong. To me, it's just akin to murder. And I'm just not in favor of that at all.
Okay. All right, next question. We're going to start with you this time, Mr. Connor. Will you support a law that would prevent abortion for sex selection? Sex selection meaning parents or two parents make a decision about what they want the sex of the child to be, whether they want a boy or a girl, whether they want twins or they don't want twins. And then they make a decision to abort that child based on the gender of the child. Because in other words, they through ultrasound, they know what the fetus is going to be, what the child is going to be, and they make a decision based on that to abort the child.
Well, this would be a short answer. Yes, I would be against supporting a law that would allow sex selection for an unborn child. I think, take what God gave you and be thankful.
Thank you. Same question to you, Mr. Stevens.
No, sir, I will not be in favor of supporting a law that would allow abortion because parents do not want, or they're not satisfied with the gender of their unborn child.
Thank you. All right, next question. Will you support a law that requires abortion facilities to perform ultrasound 24 hours prior to an abortion and review the image with the woman so long as the woman is not required to look at the image? Let me do this again. So both the audience and you all are clear on this. Okay? Will you support a law, because the question is long, you should have condensed the question. Will you support a law that requires abortion facilities to perform a 24-hour ultrasound? In other words, to enable the mother to know that the child exists in utero, that the child exists in its fetal state. So again, and that would require that the woman would have the option or the ability, to view. In other words, it would require the mother before abortion to see her unborn child. Did you understand the question now? Not required to see, not required to see. Should I read this again?
No.
Okay. Sorry,
I would support that law, yes. It would give the woman a chance to maybe think twice about her decision to have an abortion and perhaps have a change of heart in allowing that unborn child to live. So I would strongly support a law for that. Yes, I would.
I would not personally support that law, particularly because I think there is enough traumatic stress on the mother, and to have the mother to actually view the fetus prior to an abortion, I think that's a little bit undue rest for the mother.
Thank you. All right. Will you support an educational program to provide public information about the development of the unborn child and about alternatives to abortion? I'll read it again. Will you support an educational program to provide public information? And the question, the problem with this for me is, as the person asking the question is, and I leave that up to you, is where would that information be provided? Again, I'll read it once again. Will you support an educational program to provide public information about the development of the unborn child and about alternatives to abortion?
And I guess I too need to ask for clarification from Ms. Zaleski. Is this question centered around maybe clinics or health departments or whatever that are actually going to go out in the communities or have community satellite stations where parents can a person can actually learn about, other means of birth control other than an abortion.
That could be anywhere, any of those options.
Because some of those options would require state financing. In other words, education is not free in America. Education is paid for, it's paid for through our tax dollars. So I guess a part of the question is, would that exist in schools? Would it exist in public hospitals? So I'm going to ask the question, but you have your option of answering it any way you want. But I've just got some issues about the question. Will you support an education program to provide public information about the development of the unborn child and about alternatives to abortion? What's up?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And this could be done in several ways, all at once or singly. Schools, start with schools first. Have counseling for birth control in hospitals for patients who are coming in for OBGYN exams. I've seen billboards that are in my area for birth control methods that are available, and they're free, from what my understanding. Now, who would pay for the advertising? I don't know. I would imagine the state would probably do that, and I would be all for the state paying some tax dollars to let people know about preventive measures for pregnancy, and in PSAs on TV and radio, all good ideas. But yes, I would be in favor of that.
Stevens?
Yes, I do, and I am in favor of funding for education as it relates to alternatives to an abortion. I can recall back in the 10th grade when I was taking Human Development 1 and Human Development 2. That was some of the strangest class that I ever attended, along with my friends. It was just something that we really didn't want to talk about. But I do, and I think that we need to develop an education curriculum centered around, in our public schools, centered around human development. And we also need to do additional work in other aspects of our community, whether or not it's at the Orangeburg County or whatever county hospital, or whether or not it's through by Family Health Center or any of those satellites that is related to health and human development in our community.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're winding this down to the next question. Will you support a law to get government out of the abortion business? Now, that is entirely where you can answer the question where you want to. But it says that, will you support a law to get government out of the abortion business? I don't think the government itself, and I'm taking privilege as a moderator, I don't think the government is in the business of abortion. I don't think the government, they may support it, but they're not in the business. I think that's a medical issue. That's entirely, you answer the question you would like. We're going to start with you, Mr. Stevens. Will you support a law to get government out of the abortion business?
And let me just say, I really and I truly believe that government is not in the business of abortion. I do believe that our government is there from a governmental standpoint to assure the health and welfare of the citizens in America. And through that, you may have discussions by Congress as well as our state General Assembly on the subject of abortion. However, I don't see us actually legislating laws that actually deal with abortion. I believe that you can legislate laws, but you can't legislate morality.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Next question. Same question.
If I remember the question correctly.
Will you support, and there were some subcategories to it,
Right.
and if I found that at some point you weren't answering the question, I would have gone to those. I didn't say it was necessary. Will you support a law to get government out of the abortion business?
Yes, I would. I don't think the government has any right dictating, well, let me back up. I would support the law on the basis that tax dollars should not be used for funding abortions. The people who are affected by the abortions, the mother, the father, the rapist, whoever, if they want to have an abortion, that should be their business and their, what's the word I'm looking for? Their need to pay. Roe versus Wade kind of went into that a little bit with the government. It was based on like the 14th Amendment, where the government had no business, if I remember the 14th Amendment correctly, interfering in the life, liberty of people, and in an abject way, I think they do by promoting states or federal funding of abortion, so I would be opposed to that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're going to roll on to number 7. Here's the question. It says, if it's not possible to pass a law described in section 6, of course, which talks about removing government from the business of, and actually both of you did answer this question already. This is just a subset of that same question. Will you support legislation to prohibit the use of tax dollars or tax funds and state facilities for abortion other than when it's absolutely necessary to prevent the death of the mother, or when a crime has been committed, incest? I think we answered some of these questions.
That was the first question.
Yeah.
It really was. It really was. So you can ask the questions.
All right, we're going to go on to number 8. Will you oppose the establishment or funding of health clinics in secondary schools unless they are explicitly prohibited from performing abortions, counseling for abortions, or referring to any entity which counsels for? In other words, would you oppose the establishment of funding health clinics that promote the idea or provide the information about abortions?
Is that the question?
Refers or does abortions. Let me try to provide some clarity. Will you oppose the establishment of funding of health clinics? In other words, health clinics that provide information about abortion or does abortions. Would you prohibit state funding to these organizations?
State funding to organizations. The question is, will you oppose the establishment of funding of health clinics in secondary schools unless they are explicitly prohibited from performing abortions, counseling for abortions, or an entity which counsels for, refers for, or does abortions?
For the sake of for the sake of clarification, when you say secondary schools, clinics in secondary schools, I think that's what I heard.
Right. Health clinics in secondary schools that would refer for or perform abortions. Would you oppose the establishment of funding for those entities?
Because I'm not really clear on the question, I wouldn't think it's fair for me to try to answer, especially when you say clinics in secondary schools. Being a school board member for years, I don't recall a clinic in a secondary school that relates to health education in the line of abortion.
If there is a secondary school who wants to refer for abortion, counsel students on how to acquire an abortion, will you oppose the establishment of funding to those entities? The establishment of state tax dollars
In other
to
words,
those
you mean
entities?
to deny the funding from the state?
Correct.
I see. Not to enable. In other words, would you stop funding for, now I better understand, would you stop funding a public school that provides education to students about abortion,
On how to acquire.
or how to
abortion.
acquire an abortion?
Or referring for it, we're
Or
referring to
refer.
students for an abortion.
Ms. Stevens? Did
Thank you
understand the
for,
question?
thank you for the clarification. No, I would not be in favor of funding that aspect of health education in our secondary schools as it relates to human development. I cannot stand in favor of state funds going to that cause.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Same question.
Well, by the time a child gets to secondary school, I think the parent should have had some kind of input as to don't do this, don't do that. As far as cutting funding from the homeschool because they do that, I think prior to that issue coming up, would not the school board and the state have to approve such a measure to go into that school in order to get funding? I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to fund the program in the school. I wouldn't cut funding to the school, but I definitely wouldn't want to fund the program. This goes back to a question we had a little while ago. How to get information to kids through PSAs or whatnot. It's been a long time since I've been in secondary school. I mean, the 60s were going on. And I believe now, don't we have sex education in schools? And that's kind of a way that the government is putting their finger in the pot to, aid the abortion process. So, no, I wouldn't be in favor of funding the whole school, but I would not want to fund the program or the clinic.
All right, next question. Will you support legislation that prohibits government-funded lethal experimentation on the embryonic members of our human family? In other words, embryos, unborn fetus. Would you support government-funded experiments on embryos? Ms. Stevens?
No, not by any means. We are not God.
Ms. Connor?
I'd have to say no.
No. Very good. Number 10, will you oppose the Equal Rights Amendment, the ERA, unless it contained explicit abortion neutralization language? Equalization, explicit abortion neutralization language, meaning the amendment does not include abortion as an equal right. Okay, let me read it again. Will you oppose any ERA, Equal Rights Amendment, unless it contained explicit abortion neutralization language, meaning the amendment does not include abortion as an equal right?
I would support that if it included that verbiage that it did not support abortion.
Okay, Ms. Stevens.
There too, I would agree.
Number 11, will you support legislation regulating the use of RU 486? Mifepristone for the purpose of inducing an abortion. So obviously this is a drug that Mr. Elwood is not familiar with, and I apologize for my ignorance, but obviously what it states is that it's a drug that will induce labor before the child is born. Mr.
Seeing that I don't-
creating abortion, right? Which is another way of doing an abortion.
It's the abortion pill.
It's the abortion pill.
Okay, seeing that I don't know anything about that particular drug or that pill, I would be inclined not to answer simply because I don't know enough about it. If I had some education about it, I could very well speak to it.
Scott?
If I might ask the question, this is
This
what's
is a,
called the morning after pill?
yes, exactly.
No, the abortion pill.
The
Abortion
abortion
pill.
pill.
Yeah.
I'm morally against abortion in any form, but there again, it's you know, if the woman can deal with that, you know, weight over her head, that's her chain to drag. No, I'm not in favor of it.
Next question. Based on the scientific documentation of an unborn child, wait, let me just get, based on the scientific documentation that an unborn child can feel pain by 20 weeks, will you support a law banning abortion beginning, and I think that both of you have already answered this question. Both of you already said it.
This is a specific question.
But if they've already answered the question, saying
But this is based on legislation.
I see.
All right, let's go back to the question. I believe you've answered the question, but I'll answer because I'm going to ask you. Based on the scientific documentation that an unborn child can feel pain by 20 weeks gestational age, will you support a law banning abortion beginning at 20 weeks gestational age?
Yes, sir.
Imagine this is what's they call the late-term abortion. I would ban that myself.
Euthanasia. Will you support legislation that prevents the involuntary denial of life-saving treatment when the patient has explicitly directed life-preserving medical treatment, food and/or fluids? Do I need to define this?
Can you give us some clarification if you go, would you please?
Okay, let's listen to the question again.
Yes, thank you.
Will you support legislation that prevents the involuntary denial of life-saving treatment when a patient has explicitly directed life-preserving medical treatment, food, or drugs?
So that's
Any clarification needed on the question?
no clarification?
The patient had, you said the patient has rejected,
Has directed life-preserving medical treatment. And would you support legislation that prevents the involuntary denial? If a physician that is in charge of that patient's care decides to deny life-saving treatment when the patient has said, I want this, will you support legislation that prevents that involuntary denial?
Either one.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Yep.
Are we still talking about abortion or
No,
euthanasia?
Euthanasia.
Okay, because the patient in abortion cases would be the unborn, and they have no way to let anybody know whether they want to stop.
This is euthanasia.
Okay, so euthanasia, that's a slippery slope. I've known people in the past personally that have been in so much pain from cancer and other ailments that in my heart, even though I couldn't do it myself, I could understand their wanting to die and be pain-free. They didn't do it. They went ahead naturally and just succumbed to the illness. But that's a really hard decision to make unless you're the person affected by it. And I don't think anybody can really truly give an answer to that except the person that's affected and, you know, their relationship with God.
I do respect the right to life by the parent as it relates to their health and well-being. Also understand that from reading and scientific evidence that, you know, the child.
We're talking about adults who decide to bring their life
Oh, okay.
to a conclusion.
Yes, I respect that. Yes.
Will you support legislation that prevents the involuntary denial?
No. That should be the right of the patient or the individual themselves.
All right, next question. If a physician and/or staff of a medical care facility diagnoses with a patient's request, or disagrees, I'm sorry, facility disagrees with the patient's request for life-saving treatment, food and/or fluid, would you support legislation that requires an attending physician or medical care facility to provide life-saving treatment, food or fluids, until the patient can be transferred to another doctor and/or willing to follow the patient's wishes? And I'm going to provide you an opportunity to provide clarification.
Is there any clarification needed, John, first of all?
A little bit.
Yes.
Okay. So.
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
If a patient requests life-saving treatment, which includes basic nutrition and hydration, and the physician disagrees with the patient's wants and desires, would you support legislation that requires an attending physician and or medical care facility to provide that treatment until the patient can be transferred to another doctor or facility who's willing to follow the patient's wishes?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Next question. It's a long question.
Mr. Elmore and Mr. Lester, can I just back up to that? Have there been instances of such where a patient wanted to continue life and a physician outright just said, we just gonna cut things off?
Yes, that's what fuels the question, because these situations have occurred, and they do occur. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It's a long question. In 1991, Oregon approved a health care rationing plan for its Medicaid program. The primary basis for denial of treatment is the expected degree of disability or medical need or poor quality of life it is claimed a patient would likely to have after treatment. Am I understanding this question correctly? This is a form of involuntary euthanasia. Would you oppose any legislation that, like the Oregon plan, would impose rationing that intentionally denies treatment or the basis of disability, degree of medical need, or quality of life of those denied treatment? It's a long question, and I'm going to turn to Mr. Lusky again for clarification of the question.
So, gentlemen, to clarify the question, in Oregon, they approved a healthcare rationing plan for its Medicaid program. What that means is that anyone who is deemed to have a quote-unquote poor quality of life, whether it be through a disability, a degree of medical need, or whatever that may be deemed to be defined as, would you oppose legislation that would lead to involuntary euthanasia when the person who has the disability wants to be alive, but medical care is saying no, that it's time for you to die?
Anyway, so who's going to play God in this instance and decide that this person's life's not worth living any longer? Is it going to be the insurance company, the Medicare officials, the doctors? I just don't think anybody has the right to tell someone your life doesn't matter anymore because you're too expensive to prolong life. So, no, I would not be in favor of, if I understand the question from my ramblings, I wouldn't support any legislation that would allow another person to tell or to dictate when someone needs to die because it's just convenient for the system to let them do so.
Same question.
No, sir. No, ma'am. By no means can I be in favor of that plan. I think there's quite a bit of holes in it as it relates to the right of the patient or the right of the individual who actually should be able to make that decision themselves. And I think there's probably some more to that plan, and I would love to read some more about it, because I think there's some things in there that goes against the rights of a citizen of the United States of America.
Okay. All right, next question. And we're winding it down, we're getting closer and closer. Do you support a law to prevent assisting suicide or assisted suicide by allowing relatives or others affected by an attempted or completed suicide, as well as any public officials, to sue the person who has assisted in aiding the person in their desire to have suicide, to take their own life?
Am I correct, Vernon?
Stevens?
No, if you decide that you want to take your own life, you take care of that yourself. I cannot support legislation that would be in favor of murder.
Same question, Ms. Scott.
If I understand the question, assisting a person to commit suicide, that's probably akin to manslaughter. And I think we've got laws about that on the books already in South Carolina, so I wouldn't be supporting, well, I would support a law to punish the person that is assisting in the suicide, if I understand the question.
All right, next question. Will you oppose legislation of lethal injections or any other means of assisting a person in committing suicide?
No, sir. That just goes back to the my answer for the previous question.
Ms. Connor?
I'd say no.
All right. Cloning. Okay, Golly. Okay. Will you support a law that bans the cloning of human embryos for any reason?
I think they were playing God. I would not support a law that would allow that procedure to happen.
Mr. Stevens, same question.
I would definitely not support a law.
If I
Okay,
may to
I'm sorry.
elaborate, that opens the door to all sorts of things, like people cloning a child to use parts of that child or stem cells to aid in the recovery of a relative that's alive. You're trading one life for another, and I just have a moral obligation to that.
Steve, you already answered. You want to elaborate?
Yeah, stem cell research has given us many opportunities to once again play God, and cloning, I just don't see where that would be in best regards to the health and well-being of any citizen
All right.
or citizens.
Okay, thank you both. We're down to the last segment of our questioning. I've got two questions here on political free speech. Will you defend the First Amendment right of issue-oriented groups to continue to conduct independent expenditure campaigns that support or oppose candidates for office? In other words, should 501c3 organizations be permitted to give their funding, 5C4 organizations to give their funding to candidates of their choice?
I really don't have a problem with that, as long as you limit the funds that they allow the candidate to receive.
Okay. Stevenson?
Yes, I do think that there needs to be some stricter guidelines as it relates to the support of a candidate by a nonprofit organization. I think it's become more and more expensive to actually run for a position, and I can tell you that this race, Mr. Connor, has been quite expensive to date. So, yeah, with strict stipulations of a max.
All right.
Say again. Any rebuttal?
No. Okay. All right. Last question. Last question. And Citizens United fits right into that 19th question. But I'm not going to go there. Will you oppose devices such as government mandated compensation that will chill or curb political free speech by citizens and or citizen groups? Will you oppose devices such as governmented mandated compensation that will chill or curb political free speech by citizens or citizen groups? You need any clarification?
Yes, may I ask for clarification? Are we talking in regards to a public safety, a sheriff department or a police department?
We're talking about any citizen or citizen, we're talking about citizens and citizen groups
Mm-hmm.
that want to provide free speech. That we're going back to the First Amendment and free speech. And will you oppose government mandated monies that would stop or curb political free speech by citizens or citizen groups? That's you know, government money to stop citizen groups, whether it be your church group going out or whether it be another organization that you are a part of, that you're a member of. We're talking about free speech.
And there too,
Can I ask a quick question? Does that mean a student group on campus, if they decide that they want to go to the State House and tell the State House about a particular thing that affects them?
Could be anything.
That's a question. Lobbying, people who want to lobby on behalf of an issue that pertains for or against it.
I would be for it.
If I understand the question, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
You know, under the realms of the First Amendment, you do have a right to speech, and I don't see where the government should actually fund any. And I'm going back to my thinking that relates to you know, a group or a police department or anybody stopping that group from actually having the opportunity to speak freely about what they believe in.
I think if you get into the realm of government funding opposition to freedom of speech, you have the root cause or basis for having the First Amendment in the first place. And also the base cause for having the Second Amendment to protect you against the government trying to quell any free speech by the population. The government should not be paying to suppress people who are voicing an opinion, which is I guess my understanding of the question.
Gentlemen, we want to thank you both so much. We want to give them a big round of applause. We're going to give both of you an opportunity for closing remarks. 1 minute.
It won't take me that long. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank the Citizens for Life for putting on the debate, giving us a chance to voice our opinions and ideas to the public. And good luck, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, sir.
And again, it's been a real pleasure.
Mr. Stevens?
I'm just going to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, we do hold the truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you for having me this evening, and it has been an experience for me.
Thank you both so much. Thank you,
gentlemen. The candidates will be available for you for the time being to ask questions of them. I would like to thank them. There's some literature that will be available to you to take home to learn a little bit more about our organization. We do have comparison sheets on the candidates, the national candidates, on Donald Trump and Joe Biden. on Lindsey Graham and Jamie Harrison, as well as on Mike Pence and Kamala Harris. We also have for you, for your education, a graph that shows the correlation of life-saving legislation and how it correlates with the decline of the numbers of abortions here in South Carolina. So we ask you to take this home. The pieces of legislation, 15 pieces of legislation have been passed that are pro-life and that save the lives of our unborn children here in Orangeburg County and across the state of South Carolina. So thank you very much for coming out tonight.
That information is on it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Harvey.
Is that it? Oh.
Ladies? Yes.